I'm Neil Graham, and on episode 121 of the Lowdown radio show, I'm joined by Oregonian Brian Price, who is the biggest riding gear nerd I've ever met. Choosing gear for motorcycling is far more than just grabbing a jacket from the closet and heading out. At least it should be, according to Price, who has spent much of his professional life, he's also an online gear retailer, musing about the helmets on our heads and the gloves on our hands. If you've ever wondered about neck braces or airbags or the boots on our feet, and boots, incidentally, are Price's obsession, our conversation will hopefully get you thinking more critically about what's saving your skin. Brian, after our last few talks, which were mostly about KTM and KTM's woes, we are going to free ourselves from the Austrian Empire. And we're going to talk about something that means a lot to you, and that's boots, off-road boots. And I just have a new pair of off-road boots, so I've been thinking about boots. And they filled with water in a rainstorm last night, so I've been really thinking about boots. But what is it about footwear that gets you revved up in terms of off-road riding?
It's more for adventure and dual sport riding. I think that the biggest gear misconception for those types of riding is that people need a boot that is comfortable and that they can walk in.
People really think that, sorry to interject here already, but people think you need a comfortable boot. Really? They think about that?
Uh, Much, much, much more than you would imagine. And I think that, if you, I think you played some hockey, correct?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Okay, so if you're buying a hockey skate, you do not reflexively consider what that hockey skate is like to walk in. If you buy a ski boot,
Well
you
put.
do
Yeah, yeah.
you do not consider what it is like to walk in. If you buy a cycling shoe, at least a road cycling shoe, you're not thinking of how they are to walk in. What you think about primarily is how they will function and if they just feel comfortable enough on your foot. Everything else after that is, again, how they will function for the intended use. For some reason, when people buy motorcycle boots, they reflexively think, well, I'm not going to do anything that's serious. I'm not going to do any single track or hard enduro or supercross riding, and I want to be able to walk in them. And so they push the comfort level or the walkability level to the top of their buying criteria, and they overlook the design and how they will function on a motorcycle. And most importantly, and this is the thing where I bang my head on the desk, they forget the primary reason that they're buying boosts in the first place, which is to reduce the possibility of injury.
No, I thought it was just to look cool. But sorry, yeah, I take your point. I take your point. Because the legs and I mean the leg and the ankle in tip overs and going through the woods. I mean it's a huge problem. But take us through the current boot situation, if you will, because the Alpine Star boots that I just have, I know they're not a full motocross boot. I mean they look like a motocross boot, but they're meant for, I think, trail riding and enduro riding and adventure riding. But here's my challenge with boots, and this is unfamiliarity in my behalf. It's very difficult to feel the shifter and the rear brake, especially if you're trying to feather that brake. I mean, is that something you just get used to?
Yes, it is. Uh, you know, it, Remember that a person who is doing that is operating a 300 to 500-pound motorcycle with a lot of horsepower and a lot of suspension on challenging terrain, and so that's a pretty complicated activity. And the idea that pushing down on the brake lever or up and down on the shift lever is insurmountable to them, I think I think is in their heads. Now, not everybody, and to be clear, if people decide that they just don't like them and don't want to wear them, I think that's fine. I don't wear all the gear all the time. Sometimes I'll hop on a motorcycle and go ride around the neighborhoods for 10, 20, 30 minutes, not without a helmet, but maybe with whatever shoes I had on just to blow the cobwebs out. Um, but if that is occurring, if they're going without sufficient footwear unwittingly, that's something that I'd like to correct. And I don't think that the industry does a terrible job at educating and stewardship of its members. They basically hand you the keys and say, go have fun. Other sports like skiing, there's a much more structured path to entry. Motorcycles, not so much.
Oh, really? That's interesting that you say that. I mean, how would you say, are you a skier? Are you a
A little bit.
yeah. So how would you contrast that? I mean, in the sort of the minutia of it. I mean, when you go to ski, you go to a hill, you can rent gear and just go, or you can rent gear and get an instruction and go. Is motorcycling not the same with the proliferation of riding schools? Are they not fairly similar?
I think it's the same on the roadside. I think it's better on the roadside, although you could still make a good case that, a young person can get a license on a small motorcycle that an education class has and then go buy you know, a 1000 cc sport bike. But on the off-road side, to compare it to the ski industry, if you want to become a skier, you go to the ski shop and they have packages that are designed for beginners, and the skis and the boots and the bindings are sort of matched each other. The price points reflect that.
Yeah.
The people that are selling the gear to you are pretty knowledgeable, and they tend to not egregiously upsell you. They really target you at the right beginner gear, skis that aren't too stiff. And then you go to the mountain and you take some lessons, and then you can go on the bunny hill. And then when you feel comfortable, you can go to the next level and the next level and the next level. You can't really do that with off-road riding, at least in not a lot of places. And then in addition to that,
And now are you saying that because off-road riding doesn't have a bunny hill? Is that part of it?
yeah, that is part of it, and that's a much, much, much bigger problem. And I don't know how that would be solved, or if it is solvable at all. But
That we take on terrain that we're not, fully, trained for yet.
that there aren't places that you can go and get training. The industry does not have an off-road training body. They don't have that.
Mhm.
And then the retailers, of course, which I am one of, I don't know that they are always as I don't know that they do the best job at matching the gear to the person's needs. In some retailers, they have a little bit of a car dealership mentality. I've always said that there's two types of motorcycle retailers. There are the enthusiasts, which are kind of the backbone of how you get to the sport, because you're always absorbing and learning information in the motorcycle industry. You can't just get the product and then go out and use it and go away like you can with a new automobile, right? And then there are the car dealership models, which is to try and treat your purchase as the single transaction or the most important transaction you'll make with them, to leverage that transaction as much as they possibly can. And then they probably won't do a lot to earn your repeat business, because they may or may not want to do that. So you sort of end up going back and forth between the more supportive enthusiast aspect of the industry to get information and education and things like that.
Okay, well, let's jump in here. So if I go into and remind me, then here's where you get the plug. Remind me of your shop and where it is.
My shop is Atomic Moto, and it is in Bend, Oregon. And I have a background of about 20 years in the motorcycle industry, working for the largest off-road apparel company and the largest road apparel company. And I was on the product side and in product management, design, development, sourcing, things like that. I was very hands-on with all kinds of gear. And I'm a lousy salesman. I'm a lousy internet marketer, but I know I'm kind of an idiot savant when it comes to product. And so I work for these
Okay,
two really.
so if I come into your shop, Atomic Moto in Bend, Oregon. Oregon's a lovely place. Um, how will you treat me? What steps what will you ask me when I say if I come in and I say, listen, I need some gear. I want to do some trail riding. What happens?
Well, JSC, most important thing is to actually listen to what the person is telling you and to understand where they're at and what they need, and to try and advise them as if they were your next door neighbor or a fellow rider. as opposed to a salesman. And
I mean, viewing me as a profit center.
as a transaction,
Right,
and
right.
as a, to increase the value of that transaction, the number of that transaction, the top
Yes.
line number. And there's all sorts of different riders out there, and they vary a lot. I've done this long enough that I kind of know different regions and different types of motorcycles, and I can usually respond to them in a language or with suggestions that I think match their needs. That's really, really important. And I feel and this is really trite. It's really old fashioned, and a lot of industry people kind of roll their eyes at it. But I feel like I've spent my whole life in this industry. I was on a bad path before I got into it, and
And now and then you got into motorcycling and you call that a better path. My God,
uh,
you must have really been hopeless in the old days.
it was I was a problem kid. But I feel like I've gotten a lot from this industry, and and it is uh, like I have a responsibility to it. It's almost like a religion. Uh, all
Okay,
aspects.
okay, but I want to talk specifics. So if I come in now, I bought a 1300 GS, or I bought brand new, or I bought a used DR350. How, are those two different customers? And I don't just mean the amount of money they have to spend, because yes, they are. But how do you go about outfitting us? And I say this because it's really difficult. There's always new products coming out, and it's hard to know what is going to suit you. And then there's the whole issue of airbags, and I fired my airbag off in the GS last night. I'll tell you about that in a bit. So how does it? Let's deal with some specifics. I come in. I'm this age. I want to do some riding, and I haven't got a lot of experience. What next?
First of all, one quick clarification. I'm an online shop, so you'll call me on the phone or send me an email, and I'll call you. And I do that all day long. The second thing is the DR350 customer and the GS customer are vastly different.
Well, how so?
Well, a single cylinder four stroke motorcycle can ride a different type of terrain for usually a shorter range. Um, it's not more physical. It may be, for lack of a better and less offensive word, it may be a little bit more athletic, whereas a GS can do much more long distance riding. They can do multi day riding. They have to go through a much greater range. They can go through a much greater range of conditions. A long time ago, I said I worked for two apparel companies. One of them was Alpine Stars, and they had lots of different segments of clothing. And I'd come to them from Fox Racing, which was all off road. And Alpine Stars, I was having to learn road racing and touring and all these different things. And it occurred to me at one point, I thought that the most difficult gear to design and develop was touring gear. Uh, and it was actually adventure touring gear at the time. It wasn't called that then, but
Yeah.
the idea that you have a jacket and pant that have to go through very, very, very cold weather and rain to very, very hot weather, um, and perhaps humid, uh, allow you to have really good abrasion protection, um, have enough layers or room for layers that you can make it a bit modular. The usage envelope of it is so vast. And everything else, by comparison, is much more narrowly focused. Road
Right,
racing
right.
is very narrowly focused. Off road is very narrowly focused. When you start to do dual sport and adventure riding, especially, the usage envelope is extraordinarily broad.
So how does that manifest itself in terms of gear that you'd suggest? Because yes, the guy in the DR350 may go around the world on it, may, but typically, and correct me if I'm wrong. Typically, a guy with a smaller bike, or a woman with a smaller bike. By guy, I mean rider. Um, you can sort of predict how they're going to use the bike. So, but how does that? Here's what interests me. Like, how does that manifest itself in gear? So that you would suggest.
So one of the first questions I would ask is where you live. If you're an adventure rider and you live in Orange County, and you're another adventure rider and you live in Boise, Idaho, you're going to use the bike very, very differently. The person in Orange County will do adventure riding, but he's also going to do some stuff, presumably in and around his house. And so his bias is a little bit more to the street side, and his gear has to accomplish a bit of both. The person who lives maybe with closer, more facile access to more off road terrain, he'll gravitate to doing that and he'll spend less time on the street. The climate is also really different. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, but I'm on the dry side of the Cascades. So it's high desert, hot and dry here. And if you're in the Portland or the Seattle area, it's much, much more rainy. That's a factor. If you're in the Southwest, especially Southeast, humidity is a factor. And so you're trying to match the amount of time that they'll spend on the street versus dirt, the amount of time that the weather that they'll have to deal with. The experience level is a factor. Another thing that's a factor, these are all like really um, micro details, but another thing that's a factor is we all, like it or not, I never push, hey, you need a bunch of different things, but like it or not, we all end up with multiple gear selections in your closet, right? And so in the beginning, I'm thinking of a metaphorical riding envelope. And when you're coming into the sport, you're hemorrhaging money and you want to buy your first purchases to cover the maximum amount of that riding envelope as
Yeah, of
much
course, of
as you
course.
can, middle. And, and then all of the other factors. Back to off-road, you know, off-road guys or DR350 guys, I'll say, dual sport guys, they tend to approach that activity from the off-road side and from an off-road mentality, which is more of a modular or layering approach to gear. So perhaps separate armor worn on the body, jersey, perhaps a jacket, helmet with goggles. The adventure guys are coming to it with either a street state of mind, or actually they need a street sort of type of function in their gear. And
Because chances are they have to ride in the street to get to the trails.
yeah, I mean, one of the simplest things is, most people doing off-road riding are better off with their protective layer on the body. You're an adventure rider, a jacket is three or four functions. It's your weather layer, it's your abrasion layer, it's your protection layer, and it could be your storage layer too. Um, for off-road, you sort of parse those functions into different pieces. So your protection layer is a piece of body armor, and then perhaps a jersey over it, and then your abrasion layer is, a heavier jacket, perhaps the body armor too, and then your weather layer would be, waterproof shell. So the function is broken up into multiple pieces, and that's much more similar to, I don't know, mountain biking or
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
And then the sort of the what we think of the big bore adventure rider, it's typically it's a jacket, really, isn't it? I mean, the armor is in the jacket, you put the jacket on and go, but and then it has to, and I've been doing that this summer with the jacket I have, which is vents open, vents closed, vents open, vents closed, depending on the time of day and whatever weather system I'm going through. But it does create limitations, though, doesn't it? I mean, it's hard to get that gear to do everything.
that is absolutely right, and and they don't. I think that the industry, the riding public does a pretty good job of telling other riders, look, you're going to buy stuff and it's going to work pretty well for most things. You're trying to find the balance of things that are right for you, but there are absolutely compromises. Uh, and the trick there is to really have a clear-headed idea of how you're going to use the bike. And that's one thing I usually try to mirror back or echo back to a customer when I'm talking to them, because they're lost. They have no idea they have no idea what they're going to do. And this is actually a really important comment too. See, now you got me going. Um, another another hole that people can fall into is when you're standing at the doorway to adventure or off-road or dual sport riding, the sport looks very, very different than it is going to look in 6 months or certainly a year. And we all know someone.
Why is that? What do you mean?
Well, first of all, because it's challenging. It's very complex. It's beautifully complex. It's a fantastic activity. Adventure riding and dual sport riding are a mix of backcountry and athleticism and technical acumen and the art of the machine, the technical knowledge that it takes to maintain the machine. These are just all fantastic facets of being a motorcyclist. It's much more interesting, I think, than golf or pickleball or tennis. And whenever I meet a golfer, I remind them of that. But
Although,
when you
although you'd be wise not to mess with the pickleball people because they have a peculiar passion for that game. So just a heads up from someone who I taunted a pickleball friend and nearly lost a head over it. So
okay,
be careful. The Lowdown Radio Show is presented by advrider.com. Become a site supporter and receive our biannual magazine. advrider.com. Here's some things, and I want to ask you questions about specific pieces of gear, if I may. Um, Helmet with goggles or a visor, and I'm always torn between the two. I like both for different reasons. Especially when you're panting and things are going to hell. There's nothing like a set of goggles to keep you from fogging them up. But has not the Pinlock visor, this is really nerdy now, hasn't the Pinlock visor sort of made Pinlock, those anti-fog things, Pinlock, haven't they sort of made goggles kind of obsolete in a way?
not at all.
Okay, so what I bought a bike. I go in to see you. Do I want a visor or do I want goggles? What do you say?
Well, you have a GS or a GR350.
Well, if I have to say DR350, I know you're going to say goggles, aren't you?
Not necessarily.
Oh no, oh no. Well, see, I would assume I think pure dirt guys goggles, and then street guys to get to the trails or adventure riding. I think, a helmet with a peak, but a visor that goes up and down.
Mm. Uh,
But I don't know why I say that. That's just what I see everyone doing. But what's the logic behind it? That's what you need to tell me.
that um, that's what I call that gravitational pull that can point you toward gear. And it is not wrong in your case. It's often not wrong, but it's interesting how we can reflexively think that. So do you wear glasses when you ride?
I've started to wear glasses, although don't tell anyone.
Glasses with goggles are miserable.
It is, yeah. It is not good, is it?
It's not. So if you're on a DR350 or a GS, it would probably be a an adventure style helmet that had a shield, a visor and a shield. And but there's different interpretations of that too. An Arai XD5 is really compact. It has a truncated visor. The area in and around the face and the chin bar is much smaller. The overall profile of the helmet is much smaller. Why? Well, because that helmet is great for touring anywhere in the world at 60, 70, 80, perhaps more miles per hour. And it has to go through the wind without ripping your neck off.
Hmm.
Uh, if you try to use that helmet off-road because of the shorter chin bar and less space in and around your eyes, it traps so much heat that it is very, very easy to fog. So if you're dropping your motorcycle and you're trying to pick it up and it's hot and humid, forget it. It's terrible.
Okay,
It's
that's
also
good. That's good to know. Yeah.
it's also small, so it's hard to fit goggles in it. A Climb Cryos Pro or a Shoei Hornet are a larger profile, and they have more space in and around the chin bar, and they're a little noisier. They buffet a little bit more, but they have much more airflow and they fog less. And then on the far end of the spectrum, something like a Bell MX-9 Adventure. Well, that's really a dirt bike helmet with a shield, and so if you're doing a lot of dirt riding and in hot weather and more physical stuff, that's great. It's not fun though at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour.
And now these helmets that you just mentioned. They are off-road style helmets with a flip-up visor, correct?
Well,
Or are they goggle helmets?
they are adventure helmets, off-road style helmets, but with a flip up
With
shield.
a flip, thank you, with a
Yeah.
flip-up shield.
Yes.
So because I just assumed they were kind of all the same. I didn't realize there's a range within an off-road helmet that has a flip-up shield. So there's a huge range within there.
Correct.
Now, here's something I want to know. How come, and when I was thinking about this when I was on my mountain bike, and the same goes for off-road motorcycling. How come off-road helmets have peaks and road helmets don't? Like, the sun still gets in your eyes when you're riding in the road. What's the point of a peak?
That's a great question. To
See,
I don't.
I will ask the dumb questions. It's what I do.
Well, no, I'll let's volley that one back and forth pickleball style. One reason that I would presume that they don't have them on a road helmet is because of buffeting, right? It's got to cut through the wind, and so when you have that peak, if you turn your head sideways, I mean, it pulls. It makes more noise. It cuts through the air less.
But is the point of a peak to help with vision by tilting your head down for sun? Is that the point?
It it is. That's how I use them, and where I'm at, I'm pretty far north, and so, late in the day, especially this time of year, it starts getting to be really necessary. It also maybe at one point was thought to, prevent roost. You could turn your head down when you had a bunch of rocks flying at you, but it's I mean, maybe it's not really necessary off-road anymore.
Well, that's what I wonder. Is it a style thing? Because motorcyclists, we are fashion
It's
victims, all of us.
It's absolutely still a style thing for sure. I mean, I use that word when someone will call and ask about using a road helmet on their adventure bike. I will say it's stylistically asymmetrical, which is a fancy way of saying it doesn't match.
Well, I take my road bicycle out and I will wear my mountain bike helmet because it's the better helmet than my road helmet. But sometimes I leave the peak on, and I tell you, I get some looks around here. In fact, nobody really has invited me over for dinner or a drink or anything since I've been doing that. So
So
it's
don't put on baggy shorts so you'll
no, that would make it even worse. I know, but see, when I go mountain biking, I got all the right gear, and I think I'm much more palatable to that crowd. Um, but the peak is interesting. Now, I want to talk about let's talk about airbags. I said I fired my airbag off last night. Fired my airbag off last night. My God, language. So I have a test bike. I have a 1300 GS, and we were out doing photographs last night for advrider.com, an upcoming test. And I have a new Tech Air Plasma 5 with the 3 settings. It has street, off-road, and race, which is, kind of the 3 things that I do. So we were going to do a little photo op up this little trail, and it wasn't really off-roading. It was just, I was going to come down and look, like I knew what I was doing, and there's some rocks and some ruts. And well, I get up there, and it's this, I shouldn't use profanity. It's a nasty situation where it's an ATV trail with massive ruts, and it's muddy. So I kind of do it as long as I can and keep it kind of together. And then at one point it tips over and it chucks me off, and the airbag goes off. But I forgot to change the setting from off-road. So it was on the street setting. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have gone off with the off-road setting because it was just kind of a general tip over. So there's something. So how do you feel about airbag technology, and what do you recommend to your clients?
I'll start with saying that we all need to give a giant salute and round of applause to Alpine Stars for their work in developing that.
Can't we include Dainese in there?
We can. It's interesting. So I worked for Alpine Stars just prior to them starting their development program on that, and the owner is a great guy, really, really smart in terms of motorcycles and also in terms of business and trends and things like that. And Dainese was starting to develop their airbag. They had a head start on him, and so he was really keen to get going on it. And I remember seeing Dainese's airbag at one point on display at a trade show, and came back from the trade show, and he said, "Hey, we got to get going on this." And that was above my pay grade, over my head. I did not know how to develop that, and that's one of the reasons why I give them such a big salute. I'll get to that later, but
Right.
yes, we can include Dainese. I mean, I think what I mean is that the amount of effort, the amount of R&D, the amount of time, patience. There's a word for developing a product called industrialization, where you take an idea and actually turn it into something that you can sell to someone. It's a very broad term, but the way that they industrialize that item with components that are not just like apparel or protective gear, they have GPS sensors and gyroscopes and you know cell phone components in it is phenomenal. And
Oh, the complexity must have just been and then there's the whole, question of making it palatable to an audience, a motorcycling audience, which are, notoriously reluctant and resistant to change.
well, they started that in 2002. They were working on that in the very beginning in 2002, and I believe that they started using it with MotoGP racers in around '08.
Right.
Maybe that was when they first commercialized it. I in my memory, after going through the training and reading about it, I think that they started using with racers in '08, and I think that the first product was released in around 2012, 2014. I should remember this. I apologize for not. But where it is at now, the rapid nature of them iterating the product and coming out with new versions, the one that you have is their newest one, and it's great. It's fantastic. How well thought out they are, and what they represent to the activity. Everybody is missing what they represent to the sport of motorcycling.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Almost everything in our gear world is kind of derivative. The chest protectors, the helmets, the goggles, the boots, they're all pretty much iterations of what existed in the '70s, right? There's a few exceptions. And I mean, you can say, okay, a boot is plastic now. To me, that's more iterative. It's a big improvement, but it's still sort of derivative.
Yeah, I mean, the materials change and the knowledge change, and it goes through many, as you say, iterations and variations. But whereas the airbag thing was very disruptive, it was completely new.
Correct. To me, there's a few innovations. One is the neck brace. The other is rotational impact management on helmets, which was invented by 6D, Bob Weber, and Robert Reisinger, by the
Okay,
way.
let's get to that in a second. I don't want to get off. That's the neck
And
brace.
okay,
Let's talk about that.
no,
But
no,
let's
that's
talk. Let's do it. Let's do airbags. Let's stay in
okay.
airbags.
Well, okay, so um, airbags are there's no product history to call upon. They had to be completely created, and they're very, very, very different than an automotive airbag. The way that they function, and an automotive airbag works off of an impact. It's a really simple switch. That's the most important thing for a motorcycle airbag is what makes the thing fire. And it is much more complicated to calculate that and to make it do so reliably than it is in a car. And and I'm
Because
sure that
it has the car doesn't have to anticipate. The car senses that something's gone to hell, fires it off, and whereas the motorcycle one has to know by you may be just flying through space like a I don't know, a
yeah,
horsefly, and it has to interpret that's things are going to hell.
yeah. What's the difference of landing from a massive jump and having an airbag not fire, as opposed to coming off the motorcycle at 10 miles an hour and hitting the ground and having it know how to fire? The complexity that they had to work through, to me, and um, I'm pretty good at understanding how things work. That is just mind-boggling to me. And what it represents. This is the other thing. What it represents. Helmets have done a fantastic job of saving lives in the motorcycle industry. Right, just a fantastic job. And I mean, gear has done a pretty darn good job also. But the airbag is a new paradigm. It's the next level. It has the potential to make our sport much, much, much safer and perhaps more accessible to a much greater level of people. And you tend to think of that in terms of the other fellow riders. Well, what about police officers, first responders,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all of these other people that rely on it for work. It is it's we are not even 1 foot out of the gate with that product yet at what it is going to do and what it can accomplish.
Okay, but I come to you and I've got a bike. Do you tell me, do you stress that this is, yes, it's a lot of money. It's $1,000 or whatever it is, $750. But where are we in product acceptance? You know, that old theory that, I mean, it was Raymond Loewy, the great American industrial designer, had the Maya principle, the most advanced yet
Most
acceptable, you
mhm.
know? So are we where everybody, see, I kind of feel, I'm not a rich guy, but I kind of feel like you kind of, everybody should wear airbags. I think it's one of those things, because here's what I think. I think, okay, and I've known lots of people who've been killed on motorcycles. I've got friends in wheelchairs because of motorcycling. So do you. So do a lot of people listening. A lot of people in the trade of the magazine world that I come from were killed doing their jobs. And I think if I end up in a wheelchair, man, I don't want to look back and say, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have had that half helmet on. Or maybe I should have had that airbag on. I don't want to look back with regret. I accept the risks of motorcycling and I'm willing to continue to do it. But I don't want to look back and think, oh shit, man, maybe I'd have my legs if I did that. So what do you tell me if I come in, if I reach out to you?
The succinct phrase that describes what you just said, my friend popped at me one time. He said, "We tend to chase our injuries," which is bad, right? We tend to chase our injuries. We don't get out in front of them. Now, I don't. One thing I'm guilty of, and I've been bitten by this before. One thing I'm guilty of is I feel like our industry has abused the trust of its customers by being too aggressive with salesmanship. And I'm a, an old school Yankee cheapskate and kind of cynical. And when someone starts upselling me or telling me that I need to get something that is outside of what I am planning to spend or hoping to spend, I have kids that have gone through sports and everyday life. You buy things all the time, tools, whatever. And salesmen sometimes abuse that, and I just shut down. And so I haven't even begun to really suggest airbags to people unless they ask in a very broad sense way, "Hey, what do you think I need?" And that's because I want to earn their trust, and I don't want to abuse that trust. And so typically, I'll soft pedal these kinds of things. I'll put it out there and say, "Go do some research on it and think about it." But to specifically answer your question, I haven't done that as much as I want to. The amount of suggestions I've made for that product are asymmetric with how much I believe in it.
So you're not saying a whole lot, but you believe in it a lot. Now, what do
Mhm,
you think? What is the public knowledge and understanding
mhm.
of airbags? How, if 100 customers are say want a whole kit from you, how many are asking you about airbags? Is it high, low? What is it?
It's extraordinarily low.
Really? Still?
Yes, it's extraordinarily low. I think you have a bit more of a road racing background and more experience,
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
and crashing a road racing bike is it doesn't get more violent than that, I don't think. And and so the idea of an airbag, I think, is more tangible, more
So do you think it's more tangible to a road-based, motorcyclist than it is to an off-road based?
without question.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Without question. Yeah, and but even within the road-based community, I think if you have knobs and high handlebars on your bike, it's less common than it is if you have a kind of a road racing or sport bike
Yeah.
background. The GS guys are exceptions because obviously they're more affluent and they are embracing technology more open to that, and I think that they're less put off by the sort of perceived physical restrictions of them.
Yeah.
So, and that I say that as a compliment.
Um, where do you think the airbag thing, I'm gonna ask you to hypothesize. In, In 25 years, where do you think the situation will be with airbags? Will they be ubiquitous?
I believe so. Um, I think that it's a tell that a lot of the sanctioning bodies are requiring them. And so, what that is going to force is that anybody who has an endorsement in that form of racing is going to want to come up with their own product, right? You know,
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
if
So
you're
if you're Fox or Oakley or one of those brands and you're selling gear and they're in the
you don't want to use an Alpine Stars airbag.
right, right. Although I do think Alpine Stars and Dainese, and I think there's one other company makes them. I think they license it to these other brands. But you're right that if you're enemies, the last thing you want to be doing is filtering money to them.
Yeah, Helite has one, Climb has one. That's the licensing based one. I think it uses in motion technology.
Right,
Alpine Stars, and there are some others too that I'm sure I'm forgetting.
right. Okay, let's talk about. Let's keep things moving along. Let's talk about neck braces. I don't know a whole lot about neck braces. I tried one on once with a helmet, and it felt like I was locked in the trunk of a car. It was extremely awkward. Now I don't that was a while ago, and so they may have changed. Um, do neck braces work? I think of them as kids racing motocross bikes. I don't really think I see them a whole lot in general trail use. Where do you stand on neck braces?
That one is more ambiguous. I think that they work in some situations. I think that they don't work in other situations. And I think knowing the difference between the two is challenging.
Can you very briefly give me the scenario of the work and not work?
Well, it's a very simple device. It's a motion limiting device.
Right.
And so what it is meant to do is to stop your neck from hyperflexing sideways, forward, or backward. It can't do much for a compression injury, which is like straight down. But uh, it is it, it's a pretty simple concept. You know, if your head is being pushed to the side, or let's say pushed down, because I'll circle back to a story I have about that, and the helmet contacts the neck brace, it should be somewhat similar to what Hans' device does. There are a lot of
Hans
reports.
device for car racers, correct?
Correct. There are a lot of reports, people commenting that it has broken their collarbone or it's done other things, and some of that is just um,
Well, you're not a motorcycle racer if you don't have a titanium plate on your clavicle, my friend. Get over
right.
it.
I think some of that is people just trying to sort of close a loop as to how they want to view the
Okay,
product.
so where do they work? Where do they work, and where do they not work? In your
Well,
view, in your view.
I'll tell you a personal experience that I had with it. So I worked with motorcycle riders and in gear for a long time, and I've had racers come in, get fitted for a leather suit, and on Saturday or Sunday, I forget the day, suddenly they're not around, and so you deal with that a lot, and it has a bit of an impact on you, but it's still a bit intangible to you. It's still a little bit intangible to you. The idea of getting hurt is still something that you don't really want
Oh,
to
I
think
see what
about
you're
too
talking
much.
about. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I had a good friend who asked, he was buying gear. His wife was giving him grief about how much he was spending. He asked if he should buy a neck brace. I said, nah, probably not. It's okay. I had one. We went on a ride late in the day, stopped to film a video. Ironically, some talk about neck braces. Got our gear back on. We're heading home and looking into the sun. And he hit a pretty big rock on his WR250R, and it kicked the front end up, kicked the back end up, and threw him over the handlebars and into a dried up old stump in some sandy ground. And he went in head first. He had on a fly racing helmet that had metal screws holding the visor on, which awry and several other companies will tell you is an error. It should be plastics, they shear. And his visor was bent down permanently here, and his head was pushed down and into his chest. And I was ahead of him, got up to the next intersection, waited a couple of minutes, and he didn't show. I went back, and he's laying on the ground, and he says, Brian, don't touch me. I can't move. What do you mean you can't move? You're hurt? No, I can't move. And he, at that moment, was paralyzed from the neck down. And And that's a ball peen hammer to your head because you just don't think it's gonna come into your life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't me, and thankfully, it wasn't permanent. He still has issues, but when that happened, I did kind of a crappy job. I mean, I kind of like sort of seized up. Now, luckily, there were three of us, three people, and that's the magic number when you're going to the backcountry. By the way, one stays with the person, one
Right.
goes gets help. But we did the whole thing. We did the helicopter and coming in a mile and a half on a wheeled litter and pulling his cheek
Wow.
pads out and taping him to the backboard and he was paralyzed for probably about 4 or 5 days, and then he slowly got it back. He still has a lot of challenges, but that was, reminded me of how we can disconnect from what could happen. And my his neurologist, who is the guy, this person is like the haunch doctor in Central Oregon, which we have a lot of jock docs here.
Mhm.
Ray Tien. He's a customer of mine. He rides. He has a 500 and he has a big bike too. And I took the helmet to him and spent a bunch of time talking to him. And he's a pretty level headed guy, not hyperbolic at all. And he said, from the looks of things, his the words he used is his injury would have been different if he had a neck brace on because it was driven down and so far
Oh,
into
okay.
his chest.
Now, when you go riding, what do you wear?
I wear a neck brace now.
You do.
I do. Yeah,
And
I don't know.
do you wear an airbag or no are the 2 compatible?
I don't wear an airbag. Well, you don't. I think an airbag in some of them, certainly some of the models, they actually replace a neck brace,
Yeah, yeah.
and I don't.
Because it comes up and supports the base of the helmet. I think that's the idea.
Correct. I don't yet. Um, if I was doing more high speed stuff, if I was riding an adventure bike, I have a 500 EXC, a KDX 220, and half ownership in a KLR. And I live in a rural area, so I spend most of my time on the dirt.
You own half a KLR? Does that mean you ride double or one rides at
No,
one?
no, no,
Yeah.
no. It means, yeah, I don't really ride it that much, but I shouldn't even admit to it.
You know what? If you can't take a shot at a KLR guy, there's no fun in life.
But most of my riding is off road, and so I haven't yet begun to wear an airbag. I'm kind of at that spot where I'm thinking, gosh, I probably should,
You're right.
perhaps chasing my injuries, but I do wear a neck brace, and I don't know if it's going to work, but why not? You know,
So just to wrap things up, I think we've given people lots to chew on in this 50 minutes. How do we get into this in terms of how do we get our minds? Because you raise a lot of information. There's neck braces, there's lots of different gear, there's various degrees of boots that are aggressive to non-aggressive. I've got a lovely old pair of SIDI leather boots, which are kind of a compromise between a street boot and an off-road boot. And then I have boots that are more off-road. And then, of course, there's neck braces and airbags. How do we take all of this and form something that works for us? Because that's really what's important, isn't it? We have to take all this information and give ourselves the best chance to not end up like your friend.
well, first of all, the boots topic is really important to me, and I'm hoping that I can be a guest again because I think in that old sort of hurt report way, the question that the hurt report raised with helmets is, do you make the best quality helmet that you can, or do you make a good helmet that is less expensive so it's more widely deployed,
I see. Yeah, yeah, that's
right?
wise. Yeah, I get it.
And when I talk to adventure riders, I look at what adventure riders for, gosh, now 20 years, I sort of just do the informal survey on an 80 rider of what kind of injuries they're getting. It's a lot of foot, ankle, and lower leg. So
Right.
boots is really, I think that message needs everybody in the industry, you, me, everybody else in the industry really needs to raise awareness of the importance of good boots. But the the succinct way of answering your question is that, first of all, shouldn't use fear as a motivator, and you should be skeptical of any person in my position who is using fear as a sales tool. Information is your friend. There's not a lot of conclusive information out there. It's hard to understand quantitatively what happens when you come off a motorcycle and how gear affects that because it's hard to test, right? And so you have to have a kind of open and logical mind and process the information that is available to you and make the best decisions you can. And that has to be a constantly evolving thing. Your opinion should not calcify. You
Yeah,
should
I
always be.
agree. I agree with that totally. Yeah.
And then the most simple thing is this: if you fall off a motorcycle naked, your chances of getting injured are 100%. If you put jeans, sneakers, and a denim jacket and a helmet on, it goes down a little. If you put protective gear on, it goes down a little more. If you put an airbag on, it goes down a little bit more again. So, what you're trying to do, the goal of what everybody should be trying to do with apparel, protective gear, boots, helmets, etc., is to chip away at those statistical possibilities as much as they can. And you do that by wearing as much gear as you are willing to tolerate. That doesn't mean as much as is comfortable. It doesn't mean as much as money can buy. As much as is accessible at your local dealer. It is. It means as much as you can tolerate. Do you put it on and does it destroy your riding experience? Then don't wear it. Is it? Can you live with it? Does it offer a good benefit? Then you should wear it. It's pretty simple.
Brian, this is brilliant stuff. And yes, you will be back on again. And we will talk about other things. But this has been really helpful. It's kind of a philosophy to apparel, which I never really thought of until we had this conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time to join me again.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me.
As always, thank you for listening to the Lowdown Radio Show.